welcome back to another episode of SageNtheRage. I'm Rage.
I'm Sage.
And we are back with some notes from the developer Q&A with Ian Hecostas that recently happened. Now, people have known about the loot changes for a while now, and people have made plenty of videos about that, but I wanted to wait and see what Ian had to say, and now he said it, and I really love Ian, I respect Ian a lot, but there are moments where I want to slap him.
Yeah, he's a great game developer and everything, but he's not right all the time.
And this is one of those situations that's just crazy. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Basically, the overall idea, and we have this up on the screen right now, is that personal loot has been the default in WoW for some time now. All dungeons, PvP, and outdoor world are personal loot, are all personal loot. The only other place loot methods are used is in guild raids. So let's get to the point here before we keep reading these. Ian and the team have decided that for Battle for Azeroth, there is no more master looter. There is no more any loot system except for personal loot, and it's not called personal loot anymore, it's just loot. This is how loot works in the entire game. That is a very definitive, finite, and unmoving statement. As if to say, I'm not budging on this. And so Ian says this in the Q&A. And so what this does, and what people have speculated from before, is that people thought that this was to get rid of split raids in high-end raiding, because you would take half the team in, shoot all the loot to them, then switch to alts and gear the other half quarter, whatever, however they were doing split raids at the high-end thing. But we're talking about something that affects just 1% of the player base, period. And now we see his opinions on it, and he says, this change wasn't made to stop high-end split raids. That's something the team wants to do, but that wasn't the point of this change. This scares me even more. Originally, when we found out about this loot system, the WoW community thought, wow, we're going to make decisions for all of us based off 1% of the player base at best. And now to read this line, it leaves me to go, well, what else is in store?
Yeah, that's a bit alarming, because this clearly implies this ain't the end of it. You're going to get hit with more, and the whole high-end split raid community is just a small subset of the greater community at large, and so the rest of us could have to deal with basically restrictions, all based on what a few people do.
And so then we get back to the actual loot system. So it's not based on split raiding, but it will deter it to some level, and now there is no more master looter. So then Ian continues with more of his bullet points here. There is more personal agency and control as an individual of your fate. No, there is not.
It's all RNG.
There's only so many pieces of loot that drop on a personal loot system based on the flex raid or a mythic raid, and that can be anywhere from 3 to 6, I think, something like that. Maybe I'm off in my numbers, but there's only so much. So if you have 20 people and the maximum is even put up to 6, that's 14 people who don't get loot. Then you use your bonus roll, and we all know what it's like to do raid in, raid out every week, not get what you want from either the loot system that your guild uses, your personal loot, and then your coin, your little control your fate, seal fate coin, to have artifact power roll up again. And before that, basically nothing. And then Ian continues. He goes, there are some guilds that have awarded loot well for many years. That's not an argument against the personal loot then, Ian. That's an argument for personal loot. Guilds have awarded loot well for many years. Why change it? Because guild raids is the place where personal loot gets used. Because sometimes guilds want to control, whether we have new players that need to prove themselves worthy of the team, especially in mythic raiding. Maybe it's we want to gear up somebody that had to switch because in mythic, we now need, 4 warlocks for the Coven of Shavara, which is, a little overkill, but I'm just throwing out there as a drastic hyperbole example here. Or maybe we need to gear up some DPS. Maybe we need to gear up healers. Maybe we need to gear up tanks. Maybe that's how a guild wants to prioritize their loot first when they get into a raid. Well, now that's no longer on the table. And for Ian to say some guilds have awarded loot well for many years ought to be proof that it's a decent system worth thinking about keeping around.
Yeah, at the very least, guilds kind of need the flexibility of loot to progress, at least to do it efficiently. You could go ages without your tanks or your healers getting the loot they need for you to push that next boss. You could just be left, oh, the rogue got another trinket that he doesn't need. Woo.
Exactly. So then we continue on. Group and master loot puts players at the mercy of others, often in ways that aren't fair. Okay, I won't argue that. There are some times that sucks. You know, but somebody's going to get the loot and somebody's not. And if we use a loot system where somebody gets loot and somebody doesn't, how is that any different than personal loot where somebody gets loot and somebody doesn't?
The only difference is now you run into more cases where somebody gets loot who doesn't need the loot.
Exactly. There's been many times where I've been on alt runs where I've seen people get Titanforge 985, tier, and my main can't get it because it was personal loot and it's an eye level upgrade for them, so they can't trade it, which we're going to get to here as we keep reading through the bullet points. Trial players in a new guild may not get anything for weeks because that is guild policy. How dare you, Ian, tell guilds how to do what they do?
Yeah, I mean...
You're jumping in here trying to white knight the little guy? Well, guess what? If the little guy doesn't like the guild policy, don't join the guild.
Yeah, that's kind of it at the end of the day. If you don't like something, don't join it.
We don't need you to police how the little guy gets loot or whether they want to join a guild or not. When you kill a boss, it isn't about if there is something on the corpse that you want, but if someone is going to give you that loot. It disconnects the reward from killing the boss. It also disconnects the reward from killing the boss when you kill it week in and week out and the loot that you want isn't there and you keep getting crap items or Titanforge stats that aren't any good for you that you now can't trade. Let's continue on. You deserve the loot for killing the boss. No, you do not.
Nope.
Especially even in Mythic rating. Now, I'm not in some high-end Mythic guild. We've got 5 out of 11 right now in Antaurus. And we've earned it and we've had a lot of setbacks. But there's times where we have carried people, pugs and other things. Just because you're there and you're a warm body doesn't mean you deserve loot. That's called LFR.
And if Blizzard truly did stand behind this idea that if you kill the boss, you deserve loot, then why doesn't everybody get loot in personal?
Yeah, why doesn't personal loot give loot every single time? So then we get to this last point. We already went through this. It's not called personal loot anymore. It's just loot. This is how loot works in the entire game. Trading restrictions for the loot will work the same as they do now for the most part. If it is lower than the highest item level piece you have ever looted and had soulbound for that slot, you can trade it. So again, if you get something that's bad stats, way high item level, you can't trade it. Therefore, limiting what happens with gear even more inside of a guild run. So, all this aside, I want to give an example of just how awful this can be. Between Guildmaster Looter and Personal Loot, because when we pug in Mythic sometimes, we have to get like 1 or 2 people to fill out the 20 team that we need. In my guild, we set it to Personal Loot, because we don't want our pugs to feel gypped by our guild system. That's not fair to them. Oh my gosh, it's like guilds can smartly use. Don't need you to police us. Anyway, so we pug, and we've killed Mythic Worldbreaker, the first boss, 30 plus times, okay? I've only seen 1 Doomfire Dynamo. It's only been item level 960, and I use a coin every week on that boss. I use personal loot. We've used, master loot, and we've never even seen it drop when we're using master loot. I've only seen it once out of 30 kills, and it's 960. I have a 965, so I'm always hoping for a Warforge or a Titanforge. A 960 drops. I finally get it with a bonus roll, not even from personal loot, not even from, the extra loot, guild master looter. And now all of a sudden it's still no good. Now I'm not complaining. What if I was in a situation though where I didn't even have a 960? I've gone 30 kills before I even got a 960 from Master Loot, Personal Loot, or my Seals of Fate? That's just garbage, and you're gonna tell me that the whole loot system is gonna run this way for the entire game now? It's really depressing, because in the end, as much as we like to say we raid for guilds and we raid for people, and those are all real reasons, there's also the factor of we like gear. We like the shinies. It's why you play a game. The reward system for the time in keeps you coming back and playing. But this system gives even less hope for that.
Yeah, it's just RNG mechanics on top of RNG mechanics. Because let's just put it into perspective in Legion. Say you are going for a relic like Rage is. You've got to hope that it drops if we're going with personal looter. You have to hope that it drops for you specifically. Then you have to hope that it Titan Forges, War Forges, or any of that. Another RNG mechanic. Then because it's a relic, you gotta hope that the RNG of the Netherlight Crucible works out for you. Or, you might be left with kind of not what you really could use.
And so how is this going to play out in battle for Azeroth? To have RNG on top of RNG on top of RNG. I can tell you straight up, if I do my 60 plus heroic Worldbreaker kills, plus my 30 mythic Worldbreaker kills, plus my normal Worldbreaker kills, and I still don't have the item I want on any version, and we've all been there. There's some of us who haven't seen that one tier piece we're after forever on any version of the game, no matter how many kills we do. And now there's no hope of a loot system in place that works, because it's all just loot. It's not just personal loot, it's just loot. And if I sound like I'm hot on this subject, I am. And if you want to leave a comment down below about how I'm being a crybaby, go for it. But the reality is, if you play this game, you know people don't just deserve loot for killing a boss. You know that personal loot all the way can be a problem. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're excited about it. Leave a comment down below. I'm totally pumped to hear it. Sage can calm me down after I read the comment. But, you know, hit the bell, hit the icon. Let us know what you think about this personal loot system. It is a big deterrent. I'm going to keep playing. It's not going to make me stop playing. But, man, it really grinds my gears.
Yep, might have to stop looking forward to stuff and raids.
And might just get a little more ragey and less sagey up in this hizzy. Peace.